2,000 years ago, Britain fell under the jackboot of a ruthless dictator. His legions marched across the countryside, engaging and defeating all the tribes who cared to take them on. But faced with the Scots, the depressed emperor had to admit defeat. This was the edge of the empire. Behind it was civilization. In the distance, the barbarian Scots. The legions toiled for 7 long years to build the wall which would, for eternity, bear his name. 2,000 years later, at my 60th birthday party, my friends and relatives challenged me to walk the wall for charity. I would be accompanied by Pauline, my wife, Janet, my sister, and Tom, my brother-in-law.
Morning. Nice and sunny winds. The wind's a little bit chilly like, but it's dry.
Each morning we were taken by minibus to the wall. Each day we were faced with a 10-mile hike. Our first sight of the wall was of stones, quarried from the wall to build priories and bridges. Our first sight of the wall itself was disappointing, not much bigger than a garden wall. Every few hundred yards was a turret, looking rather like this reproduction. All that can be seen now is the base of the steps. These turrets were manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 300 years. But look out! Is that a Scotsman I can see peering over the wall? But the best use of a turret was as a place out of the wind to eat our lunch. And if it could rain on us, we could be sure that it rained on the Romans. Mile castles were positioned to guard gates and to house a garrison. We know very little about what life was like in the garrison. Most of it is simply a guess. The first bridge we encountered was Willowford. The modern bridge was put in position by helicopter. The huge stone parapets make an impressive sight, and it's quite clear that the Romans who built it were rather proud of their work. Birdoswald Fort is the first piece of major excavation we came across, and most of the delicate archaeology was destroyed by antiquarians looking for pavements and altars. At the end of our first day, we could contemplate another 40 miles. At Gilsand we found the first example of the wall heading straight under a town or farm. But within minutes of starting, the injuries kicked in. Pauline's feet had started to blister.
The resupply on these mysterious magical stones. The druids lived here once this earth forgotten is the race that no one knows.
Thirlwell Castle is a rather inadequate affair, built again with stones robbed from the wall. The wall headed straight under a farm. The farm was actually built right over a castle.
Heroic kings lay down to rest, forgotten is the race that no one knows.
The walking was becoming rugged as we headed for Caulfield Crags. From the crags we could see clearly the way the wall had scarred the countryside with its ditches and vallum.
Wait for the sun on a winter's day, a beam of light shines across the floor. Mysterious ring, magical ring, but forgotten is the race that no one knows.
We were surprised to find that the wall was being rebuilt, but there was no sign that it would be recreated to its original size, as in this reproduction. Windshield Crags is the highest point of the wall, and Pauline, as always, had forces ready. But we knew another treat was in store. The Once Brewed Inn is a tea shop, so we chose Twice Brewed. The Twice Brewed was once a coaching inn, and that suited us just fine. And now we were faced with the climb along Steel Rig, with views over Crag Loch. It is said that at Sycamore Gap, Robin Hood took shelter in the sycamore tree, or was that just something in a feature film? The best preserved Mile Castle on the wall is undoubtedly Mile Castle 37. But just a few hundred yards further on was the famous fort of Housesteads, built on top of the crag overlooking the Scottish lowlands. This fort is particularly famous for its 11-seater latrine.
To quote a Roman proverb, here I sit, broken-hearted,
spent a denarius and only farted. But leaving the wall for a while and heading a couple of miles south, we come to a very special place, Vindolanda. Vindolanda has been excavated in modern times. Organic material has been preserved in the mud of the nearby brook. This has included shoes, but most of all, one of Britain's most precious objects, the Vindolanda tablets. The excavations here reveal life in exquisite detail. Listen carefully and I'm sure we can hear Claudia Severa.
On the 11th of September, sister, for the day of the celebration of my birthday, I give you a warm invitation to make sure that you come to us, to make the day more enjoyable for me by your arrival, if you are present. Give my greetings to your Seralis. My alias and my little son send in their greetings. I shall expect you, sister. Farewell, sister, my dearest soul, as I hope to prosper and hail.
We all wondered if the bull at the Temple of Mithras was a coincidence, or were we becoming superstitious? From the peak we could look back at the rugged crags we had crossed. By now, Pauline was Romaned out, and I must admit that even my interest in the ancient Romans was waning. A museum filled with altars and statues of deities was becoming less and less interesting. The Roman baths were intriguing, especially the lockers, which are a feature of swimming pools to this day. But also at Chester's were the foundations of the Roman bridge which crossed the Tyne. On the last day, the British weather had to show us what it could really do. By now we were walking through farmland and woodland. But when finally we approached Deer Street, hardly any of us could rouse the enthusiasm to consider the Port Gate. We were much more interested in the Errington Arms. From here, the Roman wall disappears under the suburbs of Newcastle. So we headed back to our hotel. That evening, Brian decided to dress as a Roman. We were not sure whether it was a fancy dress box or simply the dust covers left by the painters. Suitably inspired, Tom decided that the barbarians too should be represented at the celebration.
In this case, David Skirtley has successfully completed the best of the Hadrian's Wall trade.
Thank you.
And one for Pauline.